the White House to walk us through what we're seeing here. Joe, tell us about this visit.
It was to be accompanied at the museum with, among others, HUD Secretary nominee Ben Carson, his wife Candy Carson, and the niece of the slain civil rights Tim Scott. So a whole including his grandkids expected to be there also. This was a visit to the museum that was apparently set up by presidential aide Omarosa Manigault, and apparently the second time trying. We're told it was penciled in on Donald Trump's schedule before he was inaugurated, mid-January-ish, and it was nixed, we're told, according to a source, by the Secret Service, citing security concerns. So this is an opportunity for the in D.C. that only opened back in September of last year to some fanfare, and since then it's taken in about 1 million. And a group of African American folks from here in Washington. From the president, but he's there.
The White House wants to use this.
I don't think the White House is going to use this more than for the optics of the trip. As Joe mentioned, this was something, though not fully confirmed on the schedule, was planned for mid-January, pre-inauguration. So that did not happen, and getting this trip done during Black History Month after his wife was there go and make this trip. Also, as you know, he made comments last week in his press conference about he was pushing back against that accusation in the press conference last week. So having this trip here of the president going to this very popular new attraction in Washington during Black History Month, to me seems they're just sort of optically moving through it. I don't think that we're going to necessarily hear from the president.
We just saw some video of when the First Lady, Melania, visited there with Prime Minister Netanyahu's wife. And again, as you say, I mean, this museum, it took 13 years to build and create. So these are some of the first visitors. Well, it opened in September, but here, how decisions are made at the White House and who has the president's ear. And this one was Omarosa.
Him throughout the campaign and now into the administration on outreach to the African-American community and others. She's a side row of staffers when Sean Spicer gives his briefings in the press briefing room. And listen, you guys know nothing ends up on the President of the United States schedule haphazardly, or that the president's time, the fact that he's giving his time to make this trip and to obviously then bring all the accompaniments of the office along with him to see the trip, that's no small thing.
Well, absolutely, it is no small thing. And I hope that it's not just about the optics. There's so many issues that came up during the campaign, Joe, that still demand voice. You know, Chicago is not the sum total of all things that matter to African Americans. And it is an opportunity for the president to use the trip to people to focus on in terms of priorities. I mean, it could be used for a lot of different reasons, couldn't it?
Absolutely, that's true. And the president has talked a number of times about rebuilding the inner cities, which he has described in some terms that some African American leaders disagree with. Traveling over to the museum with him, even though Carson has yet to be confirmed by the Senate. he is one of the people who would lead the charge on some of the president's issues, including rebuilding the inner cities when he gets around to them.
As you guys are speaking, Chris and I are monitoring this feed from inside the museum, and it doesn't look like our camera is completely set up and ready to go, but we did just see Sean Spicer scurry by, obviously on the way to either find the president or get into the right position. Yeah, so, you know, we've been talking this morning about how the president decides what he's going to speak out about most vociferously, David. Obviously, this past weekend, there was bad news for Jewish community centers around the country. There were a spate of bomb scares, hoaxes called in there, and then Ivanka Trump, President Trump's daughter, who herself converted to Judaism, tweeted out just how important religious tolerance is and our faith centers. Do you think that we'll hear from the president responding to what we're seeing about the anti-Semitism across the country?
We may. I mean, we did get a very strong statement, worded statement from his press secretary last night. We haven't heard the president himself in his own words quite that way. But Sean Spicer put out a statement last night that indicated where the president's thinking is on this. So it would not surprise me terribly if we do eventually hear from the president on this himself, because what we have heard from him when he was questioned about it twice, 2 days in a row last week, he strangely did not issue a statement that was as forceful as his press secretary or his daughter issued last night. Instead, he sort of took it as personal umbrage, a personal affront that he was being asked about this, in some way suggesting that he was responsible, sort of what his response was, and talked about his election victory. But we may hear from him. And now, you know, Hillary Clinton tweeted, you guys put it up a little earlier, this is the first tweet since President Trump's been president that she has directly, specifically referenced the president and gone to the president with a suggestion. She's been supportive of the Women's March, against the travel ban, but this is the first tweet since he's taken office where she basically says, step up, Mr. President.
President's walking in right now. We just saw his advance team. We're waiting for him to come into focus here. Let's see what we see.
We just saw, here we go, photographers. We saw some of his Secret Service detail. But again, everybody seems to be, okay, so people are, and there he is. There is the president now, along with Dr. Ben Carson behind him.
His daughter Ivanka joins him here. As we heard, the First Lady was there with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel's wife. She's not making this trip again. Omarosa is there, and they are getting a tour of the exhibits. Let's see if we can hear anything.
Because I wanted people to realize that you can't understand Jefferson without understanding slavery. But even more importantly, we talk about slaves. I wanted you to talk about Peter, Lucy, William. Try to humanize everything. And so for us, this whole museum is about humanizing stories of people that have been left out of history and making sure that you don't think about migration, slavery. You think about the individual who lived their lives. And so for us, this was an opportunity to tell these stories. And we have wonderful material from Jefferson, but also so we have Benjamin Banneker, who helped to create Washington, D.C. We have Toussaint Louverture, who is the leader of Haiti, who was really so important because when the Haitian Revolution occurred, so many slave owners came to the New World. So it really increased the number of slaves. We have those living around this time. And so I just think that we wanted to give people the sense and then to give them vistas, to understand that the 19th century is really all about cotton. And that's where we begin to give people that sense.
You know, Benjamin Banneker's from this area.
Absolutely.
You know, so some of the land that we live near. You know, Ellicott City. You know, I had to present it.
These are actual shackles.
He made the compass too. He made the compass.
Also wanted to say, here are other things.
Fantastic.
So I come down here sometimes and just say their name. So that they're basically
I was telling the president that in Ivanka how the
administration.